Tipsy from some serious day drinking, two members of one of England's biggest pop rock bands compose a song about a G-man spellbound by a mysterious, beguiling woman while battling bootleggers during Prohibition Era America. The story of the song that became the band's biggest hit in the States, as well as one of the most played songs in classic rock radio history, is coming up next, including the story of the rock legend that sued them for plagiarism. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you've wondered what a certain lyric or lyrics mean in a random song that you hear on the radio, this is your place. Chances are we'll get to it. Nostalgia all the time here. Make sure that you subscribe below right now by clicking the red button and click the bell so you never miss out. Man, I'm really excited about this one. This is one of my favorites. One morning in June of 1971, the Hollies frontman Alan Clark met with the writing team of Roger Cook and Roger Greenway at Cook's office on Park Street in London to start a writing session. Cook and Greenway didn't just write songs. They composed huge hits, such as the international sing-along anthem, I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing. That was a top 10 record for two acts, the Hillside Singers, of course, the New Seekers.
I'd like to teach the world to sing.
As well as being used as the theme song for an iconic media campaign by the Coca-Cola Company in the 70s.
I'd like to teach the world to sing. Sing with me.
Although it had been a very fertile room for them to collaborate in the past, on this day, the inspiration wasn't flowing in Cook's office, so the guys decided to break away in the middle of the day to get some lunch, and also to have a few drinks at a nearby pub. After downing a bottle of wine and capping their lunch with a little brandy, the guys grabbed their half-empty bottle of brandy and they left the pub, returning to Cook's office to resume their writing session. Now, the boys may have been under the influence, but the alcohol didn't impair their songwriting. Actually, the liquor inadvertently provided a creative buzz, so to speak. This buzz inspired the theme of a new song in their tipsy state. They decided that it'd be fun to write a tune about bootleggers being chased by FBI agents in the backdrop of Prohibition era New York City. Saturday night, I was downtown working for the FBI, sitting in a nest of bad men. Clark and Cook loved old Hollywood gangster films, like those James Cagney movies of the 30s and 40s with the bad guys shooting it out with the cops, smashing beer barrels and whiskey bottles in the street.
Empty.
So's your thick skull, copper.
They had the theme of the song, so the next move was coming up with a melody to continue to build the song's structure. Cook took his place at an upright piano, with Alan Clark sitting in a chair next to the piano with his guitar in his lap. Cook fooled around with a couple of sequences and then locked into a sinister-sounding blues riff, one that he said that he really couldn't take credit for. It was just some old blues rock riff that was milling around in his head. As Cook played his blues riff on the piano, Clark created the melody for the new composition with his Fender Telecaster Sunburst, along with a very simple chord sequence. With a couple more swigs of brandy, the lyrics continued to flow. The FBI agent was standing in the middle of a crime scene, a bar full of illegal alcohol. So to kick off the second verse, they purposely avoided referring to the room full of drinkers as a speakeasy, and they used the phrase bootlegging boozer. This was a term more commonly spoken in London's West Side. Just before the jig is up, and the FBI agent phones the DA to send over agents to storm the place, the agent is jolted by a mysterious female singer that takes his breath away. And the plot takes a big turn. As Alan Clark imagined it, the woman had a pair of .45s that made me open my eyes. And my temperature rise. The .45s in that line have nothing to do with pistols, if you get my drift. He described her height as 5'9" and her poise as beautiful tall. At that point, Alan Clark sang out the singer's defining description. She was a long, cool woman in a black dress. And when Clark sang that line, the men stopped and they looked at each other and they instantly knew that they had the perfect title for this song. On this episode of Professor of Rock, I want to turn you on to Masterworks.io. Masterworks enables investors to gain access to the high-end art market. Masterworks analyzes millions of data points to identify which paintings could rise in value, and then they acquire the painting and break it up into shares for you to invest in. Masterworks.io is the first platform that makes it possible to invest in multi-million-dollar works from renowned artists such as Banksy, Basquiat, Kaws, and many more. It's super easy to get set up with Masterworks. Go to the link below, and in just a few clicks, you will be able to create your account, browse their artwork, and diversify your portfolio. Masterworks' portfolio is up 12% this year on an annualized basis and has returned 27% to investors since its inception. There's a waitlist to take advantage of and invest in some fine art, but you can skip that waitlist and immediately start investing by clicking the Professor of Rock link in the description below. The verse after the instrumental interlude includes a bloke in the bar named Charlie with the lyric, "When Charlie said, I hope that you're able, boy." That was inspired by another classic film that Cook and Clark loved, On the Waterfront. It starred Marlon Brando.
It was you, Charlie.
The Charlie character in that movie was the brother of Marlon Brando's character portrayed by Rod Steiger. Just like in those good old movies, the hero braves the chaos and rescues the girl in the song's lyrical climax. The police storm the place to arrest the bootleggers and their patrons, while our FBI protagonist straddles the line of good cop, bad cop. The DA was pumping my left hand and she was holding my right. With bullets flying and sirens wailing, the agent saves the bewitching long, cool woman in a black dress from being sent to jail by telling the police that she was with him. Well, I told her, don't get scared, because you're going to be spared. I've got to be forgiven if I want to spend my living. A long, cool woman in a black dress. It was quite a deviation for the Hollies, you think about it. It ended up being a track unlike any that their fans had ever heard. For one of England's most successful pop groups of the 60s, with celebrated standards like He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother, He's My Brother, Carrie Ann, I'm Alive, and of course, Bus Stop. The entire Distant Light album that featured Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress was an artistic departure for the Hollies. I mean, the band used saxophones, females, backing vocals, modified studio effects, and more complex arrangements that captured more of a progressive rock style. Lyrically, the album had a more serious, socially conscious tone than the Hollies' previous work, such as the anti-war message heard in the depth track Promised Land and You Know the Score. As we get further into this classic song and more about the Hollies, I want to recognize our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. Pretty hard to believe that you can buy several pairs of prescription glasses for less than the price of a vinyl record. But it's true. Right now at Zenni.com, you can get glasses for as low as $6.95. I mean, it's truly amazing and very needed in today's economy. Check it out today at Zenni.com. On the day the Hollies were set to record Long Cool Woman, the group's longtime record producer Ron Richards was ill and he couldn't attend, so the four band members ended up producing the track themselves. With the help of an unknown apprentice who assisted as engineer. Alan Clark laid down the vocal in really just a couple of takes. It wasn't his intention to sound like John Fogerty of Creedence Clearwater Revival, as many have speculated. Actually, Alan had Elvis in mind for his vocal on Long Cool Woman, which I can hear that. He specifically emulated the style executed on Mystery Train, one of the King's early tunes.
Train, train.
Clark put a little bit of echo on his mic when he was singing the vocal for Long Cool Woman, giving him a better gut feel for the story.
I saw her head onto the table. Well, a tall walk.
The engineer accentuated the effect by adding even more echo to Alan's vocal parts. The engineer also created a slight delay using 2 tapes so that Clark's vocals would slap back in a nanosecond, producing a dry echo. Hollies drummer Bobby Elliott explained that all 4 band members were Elvis worshipers from the Sun Records sessions all the way back then. So they loved the idea of incorporating what the business calls slapback echo onto the recording to evoke a, throwback rockabilly spirit.
Well, it took my baby, but it never will.
Now later, when Richards felt better and resumed his role as the record's producer at Air Studios in London, he listened to what the band had recorded, and he quickly ordered the band to get rid of the echo. Richards was not into the echo at all, but Alan Clark dug in, and he insisted that they keep the echo on Long Cool Woman. Now, Richards eventually conceded, and the track went into the final mixing phase. In retrospect, though, it's interesting, that Alan Clark was so adamant about not changing the recording since he and his bandmates didn't really take the song very seriously, as they've said. They never imagined Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress as a potential Hollies single at all. They were just having fun with a song that was sparked from a little day binge and their passion for old gangster movies. Initially, the Hollies were trying to capture more of a country rockabilly vibe for Long Cool Woman, in the vein of Jerry Reed, who had back-to-back top 10 pop crossover hits with Amos Moses in 1970 and When You're Hot, You're Hot in 1971.
When you're hot, and I said thanks a lot. When you're hot, you're hot.
However, as the recording process evolved into the song, it went more into a swamp rock direction, less like Jerry Reed and more akin to Creedence Clearwater Revival's hit Green River.
I can hear the bullfrog calling me.
Now, in the early 70s, CCR was one of the hottest rock bands on the planet with hit after hit after hit. And when Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress was dropped as the lead single from their album Distant Light, the comparisons to CCR were immediate. The record trade publication Cashbox, for example, they wrote that Long Cool Woman was rocking in the tradition of T-Rex and Creedence. Alan Clark's vocal was simultaneously likened to CCR frontman John Fogerty.
If you get lost, come on, Green River.
Fogerty did not subscribe to the adage that imitation is the best form of flattery. Instead of taking it as a compliment, Fogerty sued the Hollies for plagiarism. Fogerty claimed it infringed upon CCR's trademark sound. Now, the case was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount of green, and it did actually kind of come back around for Fogerty when he was sued by his former label for sounding like himself. We've covered this on a program previously. In 1985, long removed from CCR, Fogerty signed to Warner Brothers, and he released his solo LP, the hit Centerfield, that yielded the top 10 single, The Old Man Down the Road.
The old man is down the road.
The Old Man Down the Road was indeed classic Fogerty with a signature Bayou grittiness. Well, Saul Zenz, the boss of Fantasy Records, Fogerty's previous label, who owned all the CCR masters, he was incensed because he felt Fogerty's single sounded too much like classic Fogerty. Zenz went on to claim that The Old Man Down the Road was a direct ripoff of CCR's Run Through the Jungle. The 2 songs being analyzed under the legal microscope were both sung and written by Fogerty. Now, fortunately, logic went over the ridiculous when the judge ruled in favor of Fogerty. More out of spite than principle, though, Fogerty countersued Zenz. He lost his initial counterclaim, but the decision was later overturned in the Supreme Court as Fogerty's ultimate vindication. You can see the whole thing on one of our episodes in the past. Okay, so getting back to Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress, the single was only a modest success in the Hollies' native UK. Kind of surprising. It stalled at number 32 on the British singles chart. However, it was an enormous smash in the United States. It peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Should have been number 1. It was denied the number 1 position by Gilbert O'Sullivan's sentimental masterpiece, Alone Again Naturally.
Alone again, naturally.
It was actually the second biggest single in 1972. It spent 6 non-consecutive weeks at the top of the Billboard Hot 100. That is, Alone Again Naturally. So ran into a freight train. A Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress also grabbed the number 1 spot on the pop charts in Canada and also South Africa. It was a number 2 hit in Australia and New Zealand. The Hollies' biggest hit in America has been heavily used in pop culture. It's been placed in a long list of movies, including Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, There's The Longest Yard, Lovely Bones, Kong Skull Island, and Remember the Titans. Stray Cats, Exiles, Phantom Rocker, and Slick released a version of the song in 1986. The a cappella group Rockapella put out their cover in 95, and the country singer T.J. Shepherd remade the song in 97. Motley Crue's lead singer Vince Neil put out a heavy rock rendition in 2010, and Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress was the first song performed by the band Fish. They also played the song during their 15th and 20th anniversary concerts tour. Okay, so in 2005, Roger Cook was having lunch at a meeting with the U.S. Congress. He was at the luncheon on behalf of the National Songwriters Association International. This was to urge Congress to strengthen copyright laws for songwriters and artists. Roger has the distinction of being the first British songwriter to be inducted into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. So at the luncheon, Roger was asked to sing a couple of songs that he co-wrote, including Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress. When he was finished performing, a gentleman approached Roger and flashed him a badge. The man was an FBI agent, such like the main character in Long Cool Woman. And with a big smile, the agent said to Roger, "That's our song, man." He shared with Roger that his fellow agents loved the first 2 lines of the song. Apparently, when the song came out on the radio in 1972, the agents used to key their microphones to play the tune over their 2-way radios and pump up the G-Men for a night of crime-solving adventure. That's so cool. The surprising success of Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress achieved new heights in America, extending the band's popularity into the 70s, and it also brought back their lead singer and frontman. You see, Alan Clark left the Hollies after the recording of the Distant Light album, and he was making plans to launch a solo career. But when Long Cool Woman turned out to be such a huge hit, he went back to his bandmates and he asked them to rejoin the group. Still scarred after Graham Nash left the Hollies to pursue other interests in 1968, band members Tony Hicks, Terry Sylvester, Bernie Calvert, and Bobby Elliott, they were happy to take Alan back on one condition. He had to give 100% of his attention to the Hollies. Alan Clark was reinstalled as the lead singer for the Hollies, and in 1974, the band scored another worldwide smash with The Air That I Breathe. This one was written by Albert Hammond and Mike Hazelwood. You know, I remember my dad played these songs, Green River and Long Cool Woman, on his 8-tracks when I was just a little boy. And I have to admit, I got Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress and Green River mixed up quite a bit. Now, when I was about 14, I went to work with my dad, and I had just gotten a new shipment from Columbia House, you know, the 10 CDs for a penny. I was so excited to listen to him on my Discman, and as I was rushing out because I was late, I was rushing out to his pickup, and I forgot him. And I don't know if you remember when you were a teenager and really into music, but forgetting your music or even, you know, the batteries dying on your Walkman or Discman, it was like the apocalypse. I was devastated. I was going to be working for the next, 8 or 9 hours with no tunes. Well, my dad took mercy on me and offered up the first 2 CDs that he had just bought. He mostly listened to cassettes and 8-tracks even then, but he had just purchased his first couple CDs. He had the best of the Hollies and Neil Diamond's greatest hits. Well, after spending 3 hours listening to Neil Diamond, I was pretty Neiled out. I mean, there's only so many times in a row that you can hear Crackling Rosie.
Winston, crackling rose, your store-bought woman.
So I reluctantly tried the Hollies. I wasn't a big fan, like I said. So I'm skipping through the songs, and all of a sudden I hear Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress, and it blew me away. I love this song. I rediscovered this all-time classic, and I don't know why, but it was the best thing I'd heard in a long time. It just hit me at the right moment. I must have played that thing like 78 times in a row, and it never got old. I'm not sure I've ever played a song that many times in a row in my life, before or since, but I've shown this song to my own kids, and they've had the same reaction. There's just something bulletproof and amazingly cool about this all-time classic. I always thought if there was ever a real version of the Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress from this song, she'd have to be the most beautiful and glorious goddess to ever step foot onto this green earth. She'd have to be to equal this bombastic 70s classic. Leave us a comment about this long, cool rock classic. What are your memories of this song? What do you think? Was the song plagiarized or just similar in sound? Let us know in the comments. Share your memories. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel to be a part of this spirit of radio. And take a look at our merch and our Patreon. Help us keep the music alive. That's the idea. Until next time, 3 chords.